Chapter 158 Shizun drinks wedding wine. In the great sects, weddings were a 3-day affair of feasting and wine. On the evening of the first day, before the ceremony itself, the hosts held a welcome dinner to receive all the guests arriving from afar. The evening's biggest attraction, however, was not the drinking table, but the hunting grounds outside the hall. In adherence with custom, shortly after sunset, a high-ranking elder would lead 3 spiritual deer with antlers bound in red silk into the forest. The groom's father would then select 22 unmarried men and women to pursue them. Any guest who felled a deer would receive a prize of 10 million gold. Ultimately, only filthy rich sects like Rufeng and Guyuye could afford to stage such opulent displays. Poetry Hall was expansive, with soaring rafters and exquisite tiles adorning its towering rooftops. From within the hall, one could look out over the nearby hunting grounds, shrouded in the twilight glow of the sinking sun. The guests filed in one after another, each congratulating Nanggong Liu. Their host courteously returned each greeting, regardless of the guest's status, and invited them to take a seat. It took an hour of hectic activity to seat all the guests. The ringing of bells heralded the start of the evening feast. I wonder which guests Nanggong Changmen were sent down to the forest for the hunt. Aren't they drawing straws? Anyone who gets picked is real lucky. Think about it. Bring down 1 deer and you win 10 million gold. Even the hunters who don't will have their pick of the other spiritual creatures or magical fruit in the forest. What could be better? Amidst the hubbub, the doors of the hall swung open. Nanggong Si and Song Qiutong stepped onto the mezzanine together, a striking pair of interweaving red and gold. Hand in hand, they approached the sect leader. Nanggong Liu rose to his feet and nodded with a smile. In a clear and carrying voice, he announced, "Honored guests, you've come from far and wide, from every sect and mansion, to attend my son's wedding here at Rufeng sect, despite your manifold commitments. This humble one is truly fortunate." "Sect leader is far too courteous," the guest's bellow recited obsequiously. "The young master and mistress make a beautiful couple. It's a match made in heaven." Hear, hear. These words of flattery were near identical to those of Moran's fanatical supporters at his wedding in the past life. Hearing them again now, he felt a wave of yawning boredom. He absently scanned the crowd and quickly spotted Ye Wangxi, sitting beside the Shuanglin elder. Ye Wangxi's eyes were downcast, his appearance unpretentious as ever. He seemed wholly focused on his meal, never once lifting his head to look at Nanggong Si. Both his expression and manner were as usual, or maybe even more placid than usual. Perhaps it was because he'd faced so many hardships that he had already resigned himself to his powerlessness against fate. Moran suddenly thought of a pagoda lantern he used to like at the night market when he was young. The make of that lantern was exquisite, every eave and tile crafted in fine detail. But because the artist demanded a considerable asking price, he had been unable to sell the lantern despite its beauty. Needless to say, Moran couldn't afford it either. But almost every night he'd wait for the night market to open, then run over to the artist's stall to gaze at the lantern. The shadows fled from its light, its radiance solemnly illuminating his pitch-black eyes. One day, a young man and woman, arrayed in fine silks, came to the market. The young woman took a fancy to the lantern. The instant she coyly voiced her admiration for the trinket, the young man beside her produced money to buy it. Moran had craned his neck to watch the artist take down the pagoda from the wooden stand where it had hung for so long. He passed it to that young woman with both hands. The lantern's flickering light spilled over Moran's wistful face one last time. Then it gradually vanished along the night market's main avenue, lighting the steps of that beautiful couple. At the time, Moran had been miserable, but he hadn't made a fuss. He was not unlike the Yevangshi of the present. In truth, from the moment they laid eyes on the pagoda lantern, they knew that such a precious object could never be theirs. In truth, each night when the pagoda's light shone over them, they were already readying their hearts for all the ways they imagined they would lose that brilliance. It wasn't that they had come to terms with the impending loss. Rather, they had known all along how things would end, so they had never dared claim it in their hearts to begin with. Come, it's time to draw straws. Come now. Rufeng's head servant carried a great bronze vessel engraved with swirling branches up to the elevated dais. With a wide grin, he held it above his head as he presented it to Nangong Liu. Sect leader, the time is most auspicious. Please do the honor of drawing the lots. Let's go, Nangong Shaman. Go on and draw. Nangong Liu laughed. Then this humble one has no choice but to accept. I shall pick 22 bamboo straws, and I ask those 22 young heroes to do me the honor of participating in our hunt tonight. If anyone wishes to decline, please speak up now. Thank you. After a few moments, the parents of some girls from minor sects went up to ask sect leader Nangong to remove their daughters' names from the vessel on account of their low cultivation and little courage. Shu Shuangling looked over at Yevangshi and asked with a lazy smile, Does little Yichi want to play? If you do, I'll pull some strings. I don't, said Yevangshi. Yifu, I must trouble you to request the sect leader take my name out of the running. That won't do. You'll get 10 million gold if you win. Yevangshi gave him a long, silent look. Shu Shuangling's temperament was wilder than his foster son's. After some thought, the corners of his mouth curled in a devious smile. If you're not willing to go, then I will. Yifu, you're already over 40. So what? I look young enough. Watch me take all 3 deer and rake in 30 million gold. Never turn down easy money. Wrapped up in his own plans, Shu Shuangling failed to notice his foster son's crestfallen mood. He pulled on his shoes and sauntered over to Nangong Liu, then whispered some words in his ear. Everyone was under the impression that he was withdrawing Yevangshi's name. Who would have thought his love for money was such that he wanted a go himself? Nangong Liu drew the names of guests for the hunt. The Shuanglin elder stood beside him, taking the wooden sticks from the sect leader's hand and languidly announcing them one by one. Shen Feng, Lin Sheng, Chu Yanran. Oh, impressive. The darling of the heavens, Shu Meng. 21 hunters were quickly named. Before the last straw could be drawn, the shameless Shuanglin elder blithely raised a hand. I'm the last one. Me and my old bones. Please go easy on me. Nangong Liu knew this elder's personality and didn't try to stop him. He just laughed helplessly and handed each participant a firework. Hunters, these fireworks will serve as your signal. When 3 have gone off, all 3 spiritual deer will have been felled, concluding the hunt, said Nangong Liu. I'll be waiting at Moon Whistle Fields to welcome you back and bestow a prize of 10 million gold upon the winners. At this, the audience burst into raucous applause and shouted encouragement at their kin and acquaintances. Still smiling, Nangong Liu continued. In addition, on behalf of my son, I will award 10 faewolves to the first place winner. Seal a blood contract and they're yours to take home. Faewolves. These precious spiritual beasts were almost impossible to procure even on the black market, and 10 of them, no less. The entire hall burst into life. Someone jumped up and yelled to his sectmate who had been selected. "Shizun, it's all up to you. If you win, I'll polish your boots for a year." The whole room erupted in laughter. Not to be outdone, a lady cultivator cried brassily, "Take them all down, Shige. If you win, I'll dual cultivate with you."
Wow, now that's amazing. Where's the spicy lady cultivator from?
The cheerful laughter inside Poetry Hall bubbled up to the heavens. Even those who had been indifferent at first now lifted their wine cups to watch the spectacle, eyes shining with anticipation. Amidst the buzz of voices, Moran rose from his seat and said to Chiwaning, "Shizun, I'll go with Shu Meng to the hunting grounds. You can stay here and enjoy the feast. Wait for me to come back."
"Go ahead,"
Chiwaning replied.
"Tell Shu Meng to be careful. He's always too rash."
"Okay." Moran and the 20-odd hunters passed beneath the bright lanterns of the magnificent hall. Chiwaning watched the gallant figures of those young men and women fade into the vast, dark night and tipped his head back to down his wine in a single draught. 30 million gold was practically at their fingertips. Xixing Peak would soon have the money to pave roads of spiritual stones in the lower cultivation realm, he thought. He had utmost confidence in his disciple. Minutes after the youths entered the forest, before Moran had even returned from seeing off Shu Meng, the first bright red firework burst in raucous colors in the sky. Nagong Liu clucked in surprise and sighed.
"Would you look at that? I haven't finished this cup of tea and someone's already caught the first deer. I wonder whose disciple it is. Heroic, truly admirable."
Bitan Menace Li Wuxin was sitting at Nagong Liu's elbow. He stroked his mustache and said with a smile, "If my distinguished fellow guests are so inclined, how about a spot of genteel betting? Out of these 22 talented youngsters, to whom will the deer fall in the end? I'll raise 50,000 to liven things up for Nangong Changmen." The crowd voiced its hearty assent, and 22 wooden sticks were shortly arranged along the length of the table, each marked with a contestant's name. Placed below them were strips of red silk, on which the gamblers would write their wagers. Chu Chengyong turned and muttered to Chiwaning, "How is Bitan Manor only putting down 50,000 gold? Is that Ligeser so poor? Small bets beget cheer, large bets beget ruin," replied Chiwaning. Chu Chengyong chuckled.
"How about some cheer then?"
Chiwaning leveled him with a piercing look. The hairs on the back of Chu Chengyong's neck stood on end, and he shrank back. Okay, I know you don't like it, so—" "What good is cheer?" The Yuheng elder untied his money bag and tossed it onto the table. "If you're going to bother at all, go for ruin," he said, face devoid of expression. Chu Chengyong stared at him like he'd seen a ghost. "How much?" 300,000. "That much? What if you lose?" "I can't lose," said Chiwaning. "Do you want to pave the roads with spirit-refining stones or not? With the money we win, we could pave more of them in the villages that are badly afflicted by miasma." "Are you sure? What if Shu Meng fails?" Chu Chengyong asked. "He won't. You should know your own son better than I." Taking in Chu Chengyong's uneasy silence, Chiwaning declared, "If I lose, it's on me. If I win, it's all yours. Go ahead." One after another, the silks filled with names. Even the small sects that hadn't intended to wade in were tempted in the end, putting in a bit of money to try their luck. Amused by the sight, Nangong Si stood to place his own bet. Song Qiutong held him back. "Husband, why are you playing too?" "I'll win some money to buy you jewelry." Song Qiutong fell silent and slowly lowered her jewel-like face. A lock of raven hair fell over her forehead, and she looked endearingly abashed. Chiwaning happened to catch the sweet scene between the betrothed couple and immediately turned away in embarrassment. Thus did he miss the brief unease that flitted over Song Qiutong's face. Nangongsi took the brush with a grin and walked the length of the table. He had leaned over to record his pick when he heard a shrill noise behind him. Nangongsi's reflexes were sharp as any wolf's. He whipped around in an instant and leapt back, dodging a flash of snow-white light that brushed his cheek as it flew past. It burrowed into the golden redwood of the hall's main pillar, showering the floor in powdery splinters.
"What is it? An assassin! Watch out! Sound the alarms!"
Sharp whistles wailed all across the 72 cities. Poetry Hall, which had moments ago resounded with song and warm chatter, was thrown into disarray as guests drew their swords. Nangongsi's gaze was stormy, eyes glinting with ferocious light. He swiped at the blood on his cheek, strode over to the pillar, and looked up. An ordinary arrow had somehow nailed itself deep into the solid redwood. It bore a small bamboo tube, which Nangongsi removed with a grave expression. When his sharp canines tore at the wax seal, a letter fell out. Stiffly, Nangongsi unfolded it and began to read. Suddenly, his expression changed completely. He gripped the letter as he read it over and over again in disbelief, his whole body trembling, fingertips tearing through the paper.
"Sire, what's wrong?"
Nangongsi raised his head and wrinkled his nose. The countenance he showed to the hall was ferocious, almost panther-like in its savagery.
"Slander!"
he cried, moving quickly to destroy the letter. But Nangong Liu was a step quicker. He lifted his hand and immobilized his son with spiritual energy.
"What's all this? Let me see." "Don't look at it, father. It's complete nonsense."
Nangong Liu paid him no heed. With a wave of his hand, he instructed an attendant to take the letter from Nangongsi's paralyzed fingers. After taking it in hand, he glanced down to read. Immediately, he shot an ugly glance at Song Qiutong. Without waiting for the crowd's reaction, he tossed the letter into the fire, where it turned to ash. He proclaimed with a dry laugh, "My son is right. That paper is filled with falsities. I can't imagine who would pull a prank so tasteless. It's really too..." "Really too what?" A stranger's low husky voice rang out from the corner of the eaves. Everyone paled. Ye Wangxi drew his sword and moved in front of Nangongsi. Zhiwanning rose to his feet as well, eyes fixed on the corner the voice had come from. Rufeng's sect had pulled out all the stops for such an important occasion and had charged their most accomplished disciples with the hall's security. Yet this person had somehow made it to the very top of Poetry Hall, alerting neither ghosts nor gods, and leaving no one the wiser until he spoke. Plainly, this was no ordinary man, and he couldn't be underestimated. "Nangong Zhengmen, my kind reminder not to let your son marry such a faithless woman was clearly given in vain. Not only do you refuse my counsel, you even say my letter is full of lies. Rather eye-opening." His last words were still ringing through the hall when a black shadow flashed. By the time the onlookers registered it, a man was standing in the center of the great hall, hands clasped behind his back amidst the crowd. "Ah! Run! Quick, run!" Those nearby turned pale with fright and backed away like a receding tide. A wide berth instantly opened around the man. Shizun shielded their Shidi and Shimei. Sect leaders shielded their disciples, and those in their prime shielded the young. That black-garbed man wore a sinister bronze mask and a cloak black as ink. "Why are you running?" he asked dryly. "If I were here to kill someone, this hall would be a bloodbath. Just stay where you are."